Hello, I'm State Senator John Kavanagh, and welcome to this week's edition of Kavanagh's Corner, my legislative video report to my constituents on what I'm doing for you at the Arizona State Senate. And this episode deals with the week of March 6th to March 9th. Well, this week it was all floor action here in the Senate, as the committees have pretty much ended with my bills. So the first bill that went to the floor and passed out was SB 1006, Municipal Notices and Ordinances Posting. This attempts to correct a problem that occurred when I went to a meeting of the Scottsdale Unified School District Governing Board to protest their oppressive mask policies about 2 years ago. When I got there for a school board meeting that was supposed to start at 6 p.m., I got there at 5:30 and the room was already full and they had prevented anybody else from entering. So as a result, I have this bill. This bill does two things. First, not only must a municipality or school board tell people what time the meeting begins, they must also tell people what time the doors open. So if people really want to be there, they can get there in time and not be shut out the way I was. The second thing it does is it requires the school or municipality to use a larger room if they have one on site when they reasonably expect that the turnout will be much larger than usual, which is generally when there's a controversial topic. My second bill is SB 1148, Law Enforcement Video Recording Fee. Now, we're talking about the video recordings that police officers take from their body cameras and also sometimes from cameras on the dashboards of their car. And these are usually of incidents. Now, these are available to the general public and newspapers and TV stations by a Freedom of Information request. Just like you're allowed to have emails and letters and paperwork that a government agency has, these videos are also available. However, it is extremely expensive for a government agency to process these videos. They don't just copy a section and put it on a disk or a small thumb drive and give it away, because these videos have to be screened to make sure that there is no confidential information or images that are not legally allowed to be released. In other words, the pictures of children, the faces of victims, any personal information that might be in the film has to be redacted, blurred out, or if it's a sound, taken out. So you have to have legally trained people edit these videos, and it can be time consuming. So it can cost hundreds of dollars per video to do this operation. Right now, people don't have to pay anything, and people are abusing the system to the point where there are so many requests that most agencies are backed up a year before people can get the videos. Why is this besides the cheap cost? Well, first of all, at a controversial incident, there may be 5 or 6 police officers present, and each one has a camera. So people, instead of asking for the cameras of the arresting officer, will say, give me all the footage you have. And that increases the cost for that incident by 600%. My bill simply says that the municipalities can recover as a fee the reasonable cost of processing these videos. My next bill is SB 1024, Public Rights of Way Unlawful Acts. I think we've all seen pictures of homeless people camping on the side of the road in downtown Phoenix. This covers several square blocks in an area called the Zone, which looks like some black hole of Calcutta from the Middle Ages. Well, my bill simply says that it is illegal to pitch any kind of tent or similar structure on a road or road right-of-way. So they can't build these encampments on our streets and block pedestrians and endanger themselves with passing traffic and cause an eyesore. Moving on, I did have a bill that was heard in the House Education Committee. Again, my bills have transferred to the House and they're being held in committee there. So in the House Education Committee, my SB 1013, Colleges, Universities, Free Speech Zone bill was heard and passed out. To refresh you, this bill simply says that on a college campus, that state universities, community colleges, or public colleges and universities, everywhere is a free speech zone. You can talk, proselytize, collect signatures, give out flyers on any subject you want, anywhere on the campus, so long as, first, you have a legal right to be there. In other words, it's not a private area like an office area or a classroom that you're not enrolled in the course. And second, you're not obstructing people from walking by or making noise to disturb other people. When I went to college, the whole college was a free speech zone. We didn't have these new free speech areas which are fenced off away from where students go and which really suppress free speech. In the House Government Committee, they heard my SB 1049 and passed out my Homeowners Association Betsy Ross flag. Right now, we passed a law that said homeowners associations cannot prohibit members from flying an American flag. And we meant all versions of an American flag. Well, one HOA said to a woman that she could not fly the Betsy Ross flag, and that's the original American flag, the one that has a circle of stars in addition to the stripes. So this bill simply says that any version of an American flag, including the Betsy Ross version, is flyable in an HOA. They can't prohibit it. In the House Judiciary Committee, SB 1023, residential picketing offense. It is currently against the law to picket in front of somebody's home, and we're usually talking about an elected official or recently Supreme Court justice had protesters. To picket in front of their home if it can cause alarm to them or threatening to them. So we're not banning picketing that's not alarming or threatening, but if it's an alarming or threatening situation, then it's illegal. However, under the current law, it's only illegal if the person doing the picketing believes that it's alarming or threatening. But that's a subjective criteria, and it's very hard to prove what goes on in the mind of somebody. A person could picket in front of your house holding a baseball bat and simply say, oh, I had no intent to annoy or alarm. So my bill creates an objective standard, which is what's throughout the other areas of law like self-defense, where the belief has to be not the person doing the act, but would a reasonable person think that that was alarming or annoying. So this is a good improvement in the law. In the House Appropriations Committee, I had my Nuclear Emergency Management Appropriation Bill. I run this every 2 years for the utilities that have a share of the Palo Verde nuclear reactor. This reactor assesses fees to all the utilities that get electricity from it, and part of those fees goes to local cities and law enforcement and fire departments so that they can do emergency planning and practice drills in the event that some incident occurred at the plant that required evacuation. This simply allows them to use the monies they've collected from the utilities and give it to the police, fire, and other people so that we can keep residents safer around the nuclear plant there. In the House Military and Police Committee, I had SB 1011, also Elections Committee rather, SB 1011, Municipalities Partisan Elections. Now, there are two types of elections in Arizona. One is a partisan election. That's like with the legislature, and I think Tucson and Phoenix have this too, where people run by their political party. So each party, Republican, Democrat, has a primary, and they pick their candidate or candidates if there's more than one seat, and then in the general election, the Democrats run against the Republican candidates. In other municipalities, they have nonpartisan elections where there are no political parties involved, and anybody who wants to run runs in the first election, and if nobody gets the number of votes needed to be elected, then they pick two people to run off for each seat that wasn't filled in the second election. But it's not Republicans or Democrats, there's no primary. Instead, they're just people who file. Well, a lot of people don't know much about local candidates. Sometimes they don't know much about municipal candidates. And when you don't really know much about the candidate, you look for clues. And a really good clue is what party is this person registered with? So if you tend to be conservative, you're going to generally vote for a Republican. If you tend to be liberal, you'll probably favor a Democrat. But you don't know in a nonpartisan election. So I'm not changing the procedures for the nonpartisan elections. There still won't be a primary or anything. But if a municipality wants to, they can vote and have the party registration of each of these nonpartisan candidates appear in parentheses after their name to give the voters some information. SB 1025 is my political signs and tourism zone bill. About 10, 15 years ago, the legislature passed a law saying that municipalities cannot ban campaign signs along the side of the road for like 90 days before the elections. Some municipalities banned these signs, and those bans were often called incumbent protection acts, because incumbents, they have name recognition, but the new challenger doesn't. So when you refuse to have campaign signs, challengers can't get their name out to the people. And this gives an unfair advantage to the incumbent. So we required that municipalities do allow these signs for certain periods of time. Now, they complained that, oh, there are scenic areas, there are hotel zones where signs would be a turnoff to people. I'm not sure what kind of tourist is turned off by Democratic campaign signs. Perhaps they cater to Iranian and North Korean tourists. But in any event, to get the bill passed, they were granted the right to have 2 sign-free zones not to exceed 10% of the total area of their municipality. And these were supposed to be zones that covered areas of the municipality that had a lot of hotels or a scenic mountain view. Well, and most municipalities did the right thing, and they have the zones, and they're fine. However, several municipalities, Paradise Valley in particular, created a spaghetti strand zone. In other words, they made the zone only as wide as the road and the right-of-way, and they wound this zone like a strand of spaghetti all through their municipality. And that allowed them to essentially ban campaign signs on any road any candidate would want to put a sign up. That's gaming the system, and that's not right. So I hunted around, how could I find a solution that made them do the reasonably compact campaign sign-free zones? And I came upon a mathematical measure called a REOC score, which is a ratio of the area of the zone they create with the area of the smallest circle that can totally enclose that zone. Kind of complicated, but suffice it to say that as the ratio gets smaller, or I should say larger, then it becomes more like a spaghetti strand. So I simply say that you can't have a zone with a REOC score below 0.10. It allows for long, narrow zones, for like a scenic drive, but it stops the spaghetti type zone that Paradise Valley did. Moving on, SB 1066, election mailers third-party disclosures. I was approached by the counties, in particular their recorders who run the elections, about a problem they have with private parties sending out mailers to try to get people to register to vote. So they send out the mailers, and they often have a letter saying, our records indicate you're not registered. Enclosed, please find a registration form and send it in to us or to the county recorder. The problem is they use bad mailing lists. So some of the letters they're sending out go to people who aren't eligible to vote. Some of the, since they don't know who is or who isn't, they often send these letters out to people who are registered to vote. And this creates 2 problems. First, people who are not registered to vote may think they can because this letter looks like it came from the county. They'll have little seals on it and make it look official. And they aren't, and they register, and they could be breaking the law because if you're not eligible to register, it's against the law to register. The second problem is people who are registered who get letters saying they're not from what they think is the county recorder suddenly call up and say, what's going on? I'm not registered, register me. And then it takes a lot of time to research it and tell them that, no, you are registered. All this bill does is it simply says that these non-government agencies, if they do this, have to put on the front of the envelope in large print, not a government agency, so people aren't fooled. And the final bill is SB 1201, Early Ballot Signatures Electronic Poll Books. Now, when you mail in an early ballot, you sign the front of the envelope with your name. And that signature is very important because that's how the county determines that you are the person who did that ballot. So when that ballot arrives, they will look up your name and they will pull up your past signatures, the signature that you used when you registered to vote. If you voted a few times in person, the signature that you signed into the book at the polling place. And they will compare those signatures which they have with the signature that you mailed in. And if they match or they're really close, they'll say, yes, this is the person. If they're really different, then they'll say, well, this might not be the person. We have to contact this person to see if they actually did this. Now, lately, instead of having pads with paper pads at polling places, they're using electronic poll books that look like little iPads. And they're having people sign with their fingers or a stylus. Well, signatures vary greatly, even within the same person. Your signature will look a little different if you do it standing, if you do it sitting, if you're tired, if you've had a few drinks, if you're rushed. So there's a natural variation in signatures. But when you suddenly use an iPad-like device and your finger, that signature is way different. So if that signature is allowed to be used as one of the comparators, right, then all of a sudden you have to really greatly give greater leeway to what signatures are legal. And this is going to cause a lot of fraudulent signatures to be accepted as legal. So all we're saying is you can't use these electronic signatures. If you have a ballot and somebody wrote with pen and pencil, that's their signature, then you have to compare it to a signature that they made with pen and paper, with pen on a paper, to prevent voter fraud. All right, well, that's it for this week's Kavanagh's Corner. And again, I still have more bills that are proceeding over to the House. I'm going to have more bills heard in House committees, and some of my bills are going to start to find their way to the House floor for final read, and I will be keeping you abreast of those. In addition, I am chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and I have a key role in helping get the budget together, and we are starting to work very diligently with the House on the budget, and we're trying to bring in some Democrats and the governor. So expect to have some updates on the progress or lack of progress on the budget. So again, I'm State Senator John Kavanagh. Thank you for watching Kavanaugh's Corner.